So this is our virtual tour for our family pavilion, and we're so thankful to have the team of Micheal Shu, Office of Architecture, joining us today. This is one of a series of tours that we've been doing. If you're interested in viewing this one after the presentation, or if you'd like to view one of our other tours, please check out our YouTube channel or check us out on social media. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to John Rigdon from the Waterloo Greenway team.
Great, thanks, Melissa. And you can go on to the next, Maija. Yeah, thanks. So just to provide some context before we get into the details of the family pavilion, I wanted to talk a little bit about the overall project and show you all some updated information on Waterloo Park. So, Waterloo Park is phase 1 of 35 acres of parks and open space along Waller Creek that we call Waterloo Greenway. Here you can see phase 1, which is those 10.5 acres of park space between 12th and 15th Street and Trinity and Red River. So we have, University of Texas just to the north, the state capitol just to the west, and the former hospital site just to the east and downtown to the south, so very centrally located. This park has a long history of events and programs in the park space, and a lot of those were more ad hoc as people brought in tents and stages for various events. And so we'll talk about how this park looks to achieve a lot of that goals of that history, but builds on that with more permanent infrastructure. It has a wide range of amenities in addition to hosting events, obviously. The park will include gardens, playscapes, an amphitheater with a capacity of up to 5,000, and other more immersive natural experiences, along with about a mile of trails. So looking at this shot here, this is kind of the vision for the park at night. So, obviously this is during an event. You can see a large crowd gathered in the open lawn, and looking at the stage underneath that white canopy, which is the lit up structure you kind of see in the middle there. It also gives you a sense of kind of how centrally located this is. The capacity for the largest events would be up to 5,000. So a pretty substantial event or gathering could happen in this space. And we look at this as an opportunity for a wide range of events, from obviously contemporary music shows to ballet and arts, as well as gatherings like runs or other events. And sorry, I'm getting some feedback from someone's mic there. So everyone make sure they're muted, please. Thank you. Okay, next, please. Here's a shot of the park. This is sort of, well into construction, but a lot of the work we did in the first year of construction was underground, moving the earth around. So, we relocated utilities and really shaped the earth on site to accommodate the future structures, playscapes, and plantings. So in December, the site looked like this. You can kind of see the crane right in the middle there where the stage would be in the future. And you can see a lot of the great historic live oaks throughout the site that we really built the park around. Next slide, please. And this next shot is from just earlier this month. So, in that short period of time, a significant amount of work happened on site and everything really changed. We have the structure. You can see the concrete walls, and that's the structure of the amphitheater building. And one of the things we tried to do is, we wanted to build in permanent infrastructure to support the events and activities and family uses of the park. And the family pavilion is one of those structures. The others are these concrete buildings you see here. And one of the goals is to make those buildings really integrate with the landscape. In the case of the building you're looking at here, a lot of the facilities are underground with green roofs on them, and you really experience them as these beautiful curved walls. And that'll have restrooms and concessions to support the larger events, and those can be closed off during non-event times. You also see, again, that central location with the Capitol and the city just in the background there. Next, please. All right, well, I'm going to walk y'all through some aerial photos of the site and set some context for the family pavilion presentation. So we'll quickly kind of take a drone's eye view around the site and show you all the latest. Next, please. All right, next, please. There we go. All right, so this is a shot looking from 15th Street south down Waterloo Park and Waller Creek. So you can see Waller Creek on the left. Last week we talked a lot about Waller Creek and the tunnel inlet facility. You can see that in the background along Waller Creek, and that really sort of sets the eastern boundary of the park in a lot of ways. We're also looking sort of down towards downtown, and you can see a lot of the trails and park unfold, as well as the grade change from the southernmost portion of the site down to the northeast. There's a significant grade change of about 50 feet. Next slide, please. Here's a view over top of the amphitheater looking out towards the Great Lawn. We've got about 5 miles of steel in the roof of that structure. And you can see all those layers which create that shade. And then there'll be a rain protection layer as well, which keeps the performers and attendees dry during a show mode. But during regular park use, that'll be a space where park goers can walk up on stage, hang out, maybe sit at some cafe tables, and sort of use that beautiful shade canopy. You can also see the development, as I mentioned earlier, that's happening all around us. So just across the way, you can see the redevelopment of Central Health and the Innovation Zone. Moving a little further to the south, I like this shot a lot because you can see the curved walkways coming in. One of the big challenges on site, as I mentioned, was the significant grade change. So from the bottom right corner of this photo to the furthest in the distance down there towards Central Health, there's about a 50-foot elevation change. One of the goals of the overall project and program was universal accessibility. And so we wanted to create pathways and trails that were accessible to all and didn't require alternatives. So in this case, we made this very gently sloping trail using this beautiful elevated bridge structure, which curves through the park. And the forms were just coming off in the last week, and it looks really great. You can see that in the middle. Also in the bottom left, you can see the just side of the Family Pavilion building there, and we'll be talking a lot more about that later. Next slide, please. This next view is looking from the southwest corner out across the park. Again, that the trail as it curves through the park, and the Family Pavilion in the top left over there, in the canopy in the background. I like this shot a lot because it shows the beautiful heritage trees that we have on site that we worked around with the design. It's a key feature for us. We relocated 4, soon to be 5 heritage trees on site. And one of the real benefits of that is we have this great day one shade. We don't have to wait 15, 20 years for the trees to grow in order for people to experience the beautiful shade. So we built a lot of seating areas, trails, and other spaces which really benefit from shade in and around these beautiful trees. And perhaps the 2 most beautiful trees on site are right adjacent to the Family Pavilion. So we'll be talking a lot more about the design and how those trees work well with the design of the building over there. But those are some of the best trees on the property. Next, please. Another one of the distinguishing features on site, and this is looking from 12th Street north. So you can see the medical school and UT off in the distance, but we have this large piece of tunnel infrastructure, the tunnel inlet facility. Any of y'all who attended our presentation last week got a lot of really great in-depth information about how the tunnel functions and operates and what it does to benefit the overall Waterloo Greenway Park system. And this is sort of the central facility for that tunnel. And it's key in the center of the park, and we've designed around that a lot. And I think there'll be some really cool opportunities as the park opens to engage and learn about the great function and benefit that provides for the park system and our community as a whole. Next slide, please. This shot's really roughly looking from above the hospital, the former hospital, or the parking garage over there, and down onto the park. You can see we have this concrete structure at the bottom, which reaches out over the creek and the pond. That reclaims about a ½ acre of park space and allows the floodwaters to still move underneath there. And you can see in detail, we just had a flood 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago before this photo was taken. So we've got a lot of flood debris in there, and you can really sense the benefit that this tunnel provides. All that debris has already been cleared out easily with that facility, and now the creek is clear again. And all those floodwaters and debris did not go down the creek and damage property. So you can see that benefit, and these things are very much overlapping. Also, this gives you a sense of the existing trees on site and this large open lawn space. Next, please. And that moves us to today's focus, which is the Family Pavilion. So 2 of the trees that I mentioned are these beautiful existing heritage oak trees that have been in the park for generations. and before that as it was a neighborhood. And those exist kind of right in the center of the park on the west side. When MVVA, Micheal Van Valkenburg and Associates, was designing this park, this was seen as a real opportunity to utilize the shade around those trees to provide places for people to sit, relax, eat, and enjoy the park. With that idea in mind, we worked with Michael Shu, Office of Architecture, to design this great concept of the family pavilion in this location roughly that's highlighted in blue here, which will serve a number of key features for the park at all hours of operation and be a great companion to the garden spaces, the amphitheater spaces, and other items I mentioned, including a playscape. And so with that, to talk in much greater depth about the family pavilion, I'll pass it off to Micheal.
Thanks so much, John, for that sort of primer and introduction. This has been an incredible job for us, and we're so proud to be working with you guys and collaborating with MVVA on the entire project. With me today, I have Maija Kreishman, the managing partner of our office, and also Andrew Bell, senior associate and sort of project lead for us. Andrew's been doing an incredible job making sure the project gets built out. We can go to the next slide. I wanted to start by sort of talking about our inspiration, where our hearts and minds were at this job. But before I do that, I wanted to give a really quick introduction to our office. We're sort of Austin homegrown, about 50 architects and interior designers, and you may know some of our jobs, like the ones on the screen. There you have Home Slice and Loro and P. Terry's. Those are some of the places you may know around town, but we've also completed projects like the South Congress Hotel and the Line Hotel and Fairground downtown. We're big believers in placemaking and designing for a sort of memorable and sticky experience. So that's why this project for the family pavilion was such an enticing job for us. So moving on to inspiration. What we love about nature, especially Central Texas nature and its topography and geology, is a sort of contrast of experiences. So you have this classic photo of Hamilton Pool. And the way we're reading this photograph is really, we love the idea of materials that are very solid, really grounded, contrasted with the sort of softness and texture and changing sort of scenery of vegetation. So this project is really about those two things working in unison. And we also love some of these images of where really hard, heavy materials like limestone, in our case concrete, were sort of thought about and designed in a way to where they could almost float, because we love the idea of sort of lighting coming through those two things as a screen and making for a really, really interesting experience. It was also the job of this building not to overexert itself, so we didn't want it to be over-designed. The park is beautiful. It's really about gathering and reconnecting with nature and less about architecture that's a little bit overdone. So I hope you'll see that the building is meant to be quite subtle, with lots of interesting nods to how we bring light into it, that these sort of, contrasting experiences and textures will render in the final product when all the landscaping is grown over the building. It was really meant to sort of tuck into the hillside and be a sort of a supporting cast member as opposed to being front and center. And it also makes for a courtyard for trailers and food and beverage to be had by families. We feel like these sort of services are really essential to make for a complete park, and we did our best to sort of integrate those everywhere we could. And we can go on to the next one. And here you get some inspiration images of those sort of contrasting things we were talking about, how the natural stone of the site versus the more man-made elements of the cast-in-place concrete with the vegetation, and then having the sun really put it all into play as the catalyst. These are the things that inspired us for the job, and these are the experiences we hope to build in. We can move on, and with that, I will hand it over to Maija to talk about the sort of building itself. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for having us, and thank you to the Waterloo Greenway team for having us as a part of the project team. It's just been such a pleasure. Yeah, so we have what might be considered quite a small part of the project, but one that I hope is doing a kind of really big service to the project. So as John oriented you, the Family Pavilion really sits just off of one of the main entries off of Trinity Street, right next to two of, I think, most beautiful trees on site. But its real intention here was to kind of serve that accessibility goal. So we did start a lot of studies, I will say, as you know, with Waterloo Greenway, and talked a lot and listened a lot. You know, did this want to be a real restaurant? Did this want to be this or that? And we really came full circle to say, you know, we wanted this to be a really accessible part of the project. And so for us, that meant several things. It meant the presence of kind of food trailers, which do many things. You know, I think it's very kind of like it's something that Austinites really love. I feel like it's one of those things that we can kind of claim as being an Austin first, maybe in many ways. But more importantly, it allows accessibility to different price points of food. It allows different restaurateurs to come in and bring different cuisines to the project. And it brings a certain kind of casualness that, you know, then you can come and get food with your family. You know, you could be dressed up, you could be down, you know, down low, and all the above. So, and I think most importantly now, even considering where we are, is that the food is really feeding outward. So this was an intention of, you know, making sure that the food could really kind of be carried throughout the park and be accessible to the beautiful heritage deck or down to the family play area and all of the above. So the main part of the project does include a kind of courtyard to contain 2 food trucks. And then the family pavilion is really, in essence, kind of, again, a service to the park. So it includes same-sex restrooms, a sink, a lot of storage, and a lot of those things that just, you know, a park needs. But instead of just being a kind of shed or mundane building, we really wanted to kind of celebrate these experiences and make it an artful part of the park. Come on, there we go. Oh, I'm gonna skip right past, excuse me. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of lag, I apologize. So really quickly, again, just to kind of orient you on what is inside, this is just a 900 square foot building, so not a huge space. But again, it has 3 unisex restrooms. The main focal point of the project, really, what you'll see in the renderings, revolves around a central sink. So you'll see in some of the inspirations, we wanted that really to kind of be an elevated experience where it could be a kind of one that's shared, but it shares even planting and all of the above. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But then again, you know, we just needed some things like storage and places for trash to make sure that, you know, the restaurants could really function and just be celebrated as that. And then here's the design. So, you know, our main goals here, John described and Michael as well, were, you know, there was a lot about this building as being kind of a quiet component of the site, that it was really integrated into the landscaping and into the natural grade of the site. But we've always been asked, you know, especially by the Waterloo Greenway team, that, you know, how can we make every experience, you know, feel designed, that design can be for everyone. And that, you know, even something as simple as, you know, sort of washing your hands can be kind of an elevated experience. So we really owned the material palette of the rest of the park. So we enjoyed working with Thomas Pfeiffer's office, and they had sort of celebrated such a language of concrete. And concrete is one of those things that inherently is used to retain land. But we started to ask ourselves about how concrete could actually, instead of always being an inherently heavy material and very strong, how could we actually transform it into something that floats, feels very light? And our solution here was to actually create a very thin blade of a ceiling. So you sort of feel the mass of the concrete walls, you know, embedding into the land, and then you feel the tiniest of roofs just hovering above that. And the kind of functional side of that is that we are bringing some passive sustainable green features, and that actually allows natural ventilation in and out of the building. So it's not an air-conditioned building, but that sort of slit at the top allows it to breathe, literally. And then you see the food trailers in the foreground. Again, we're showing very, very conservative Airstream trailers here, but we're hopeful that these things will have color, that they'll be switched out, that they can be a variety of foods, that when you come to the park, it's a really kind of unique experience. And then here's a view really, again, looking at kind of the heart of the family pavilion, which is, again, designed really around this kind of vessel sink. So we were inspired by almost kind of some primal or even kind of religious, baths, but we, it's a cast in place concrete sink. There's a little bit of, for you architects on the line, a Carlo Scarpa inspiration. It sort of steps down, but it floats as an island. So it can really, kind of service all. And then at the backdrop, we bring in the landscape to the building. So there's a skylight at the top. It really grazes the beautiful architectural concrete walls. And then plants can sort of come up. And, what we love about this is this building will really change with the seasons. And it, hopefully seamlessly kind of integrates with all of that. The last feature, which we, designed obviously before a lot of this happened, but we wanted to make this super accessible to families. So in addition to kind of the guts of the program inside, we have a kind of hand washing and drinking water station outside the building. And that was really intended to make sure that, moms and dads and kids could, really go play around, get a little dirty. That's the kind of hope here. And then they can get a drink of water or wash their hands off really easily. And that there's enough room for strollers and all of those things, so that, this really becomes a place and kind of the heart of especially a lot of the family activity of the project. And it's right adjacent to the sort of family playscape. So, again, that was a lot of the thought process of being able to make sure we serve food to all of these areas, that there was a space to kind of grab food quite quickly and then go have a picnic with your family while your children are running around. And, MVVA has just done such a wonderful job of kind of fusing nature and play and exploring. And we just wanted this building to really be in support of that. And I can't wait. I don't know if they're going to let adults go down this natural slide, but I hope so. So we can ask Sean about that afterwards. And then, wanted to just retouch on, again, we know that the kind of star of the project really is the pavilion piece. But we were really inspired by the way that Thomas Pfeiffer's office, utilized this beautiful concrete as kind of the anchor into the landscape, and then this kind of white cloud of a roof to hover above. So, our building is kind of a little bit, again, in support of that and letting this be the star. But we were really trying to tie the kind of high caliber of design even into our kind of smaller building, and really tying together to the design features as a whole. And with that, I will hand it off to Andrew Bell, who has been, this building might be small, but it is quite complex. And so we would love him to kind of show you some construction photos and talk about how it's coming.
Thanks, Maija. Hey, everybody. Yeah, so this is a photo from just a few weeks ago. We actually had our roof pour 3 weeks ago. And so you're kind of seeing a recent photo. The sink hasn't come in yet. The kind of steel components aren't installed yet, but we are kind of seeing where all the concrete has kind of come to fruition. And the real kind of straightforward simplicity of this kind of design vision that the team put together, it took a lot to execute and integrate all of those systems and make everything seem as seamless as it is today. So it's been a great opportunity, a lot of fun for us, and been a lot of kind of working through all those details to make sure everything comes together and looks as seamless as it does. Early on, we had to kind of work to coordinate everything to be hidden and concealed. This is a building that you will see from multiple sides and even from above. So it was important to our team to keep the even the roof really pure and just a concrete structure. So from this view, you're at least seeing a little peek of that skylight beyond and that extremely thin blade roof that we were really happy to see that the construction team was able to execute fairly well. It's such a tight geometry that the formwork and the complexity of getting that to pour consistently required a couple of different pours, but I think we did a pretty good job working with the team to kind of find ways of concealing the joints between pours and making the final object kind of appear as a single piece. You can go to the next slide. You can really see in this image that how the building kind of tucks into the landscape and really kind of deals with the challenge of grade in this project. So from Trinity Street, you won't even really perceive this building. You'll only see kind of the garden and the park beyond. It'll kind of tuck away and be hidden. But then for patrons within the park, they kind of happen upon it and they see this really beautiful moment unfold. And you can see that, you know, there's some messy construction debris around, but in general, the execution of the concrete on the exterior has come out really great. So we're super excited about the progress. And you can kind of see some of the geometry that wraps around to the backside of the building that wasn't apparent in the rendering, that kind of datum that follows around and brings in natural light and allows for natural ventilation carries to the backside of the building as well. And I think we can go to the next slide. And this is kind of standing inside the building. So it was really exciting to, even on such a small building, to be able to create these really dramatic moments on the inside of the spaces. We loved kind of being able to try and think about, you know, sustainability and passive ventilation, and at the same time think about these handful of moments where we could bring light in a really dynamic way, just to make every experience in the park seem like a high design moment. So this is kind of standing inside the restroom facility and looking at one of those corners where that blade roof kind of floats and cantilevers and transitions at the corners pretty seamlessly. And we can go to the next slide, Maija. And again, another shot of that kind of main lobby space in the restroom, kind of the major area. So that back wall will eventually have plantings. There's a planter at the base that's sort of integrated. And then at the top, there is a skylight. So the idea is that just becomes like the backdrop that you saw in the rendering, where it's filled with greenery and natural light kind of pours through while people are in there washing their hands. And you can see a little bit of there's a small joint between the thin blade roof and that volume on the left. And that is just one of the places where we found a way to kind of seamlessly transition from pour to pour. Don't want to go too deep into the minutia of how we're, you know, coordinating and constructing everything, but it's been quite an exciting challenge for us, trying to make everything come together without exposing any conduits or plumbing lines or any of those elements that you normally see in a building to make it operate properly. I think we have one more slide of the construction photos. And this is a great photo because you can finally kind of get a sense of that heritage deck beyond. Those are those really beautiful trees that John was talking about at the beginning of the project, and really kind of a place for people to be able to go after, you know, stopping by the restroom, stopping by the food trailers. They can wander over there, and there's some seating areas beyond. So it's kind of, we love how this kind of sits within the larger context of the park and can kind of play, you know, maybe a minor supporting role, but still one that ties into all the other great experiences that people are having. And yeah, I think with that, if Maija or Maija, you guys have any other questions or things you want to add or questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing hopefully again, I think the city of Austin in general, and certainly, Waterloo Greenway has just been so wonderful about sort of giving design, to its natural spaces. And so we really just wanted to celebrate things like, bringing a kind of beam of light or tracking the sunlight through a project, or again, integrating the building into the landscape and sort of making it a seasonal experience. But, we just, for us, it was just such an important part to this building will be accessible for whenever the park is open. So even if there's a performance, this building will be open, it will be serving food. And so, it was important to us to really have that be a really elevated and kind of celebrated experience.
Thank you, Maija, and thank you, team. That was a really great overview of the pavilion, but also the context in the park. So for folks watching along, if you have questions, please submit them in the chat, and we'll read them out loud to our presenters so that we can answer your questions. One that we've received is about the restroom and restroom hours and the setup with gendered or non-gendered restrooms. So John, could you help us answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 3 restrooms you can see here on the left. One is handicap. They're all unisex or non-gendered restrooms, and these will be open during all park hours. So, we'll follow standard park hours that the Parks Department follows, but there may be certain special events or other nights where we extend hours, and these restrooms will be open and serviced by, our team during those hours. So really, as Maija pointed out, we want to provide that accessibility to families and park users right on site. And, the other thing obviously is, after talking with a lot of parks and our own programs, people need to wash their hands a lot more often than they need to use the restroom. So one of the cool ideas that Micheal Shu's office was able to incorporate here was pulling those sinks out of the restroom stalls and out into a more public space, so that if we're having an art class or kids are playing in the dirt, they'll be able to come wash their hands in that open vestibule, even if the restrooms are in use. So, we've taken a lot of that feedback to heart from our own programs as well as other partners, and put that in practice in this building.
Thank you, John. And Micheal Shu team, do you have any other additions to that about the design choices to help with that family experience?
Yeah, I think we studied a lot. Maybe I'll back up here. The kind of area in front. Making sure that again it was sort of spacious enough for lots of strollers and families. Again, that kind of hand washing experience. I think the other thing I will note is that we are also using reclaimed water. So we're sort of staying true to a lot of the kind of green values of the park as well. But we really felt like the kind of space in front of the building was just as important as kind of making sure that the space within felt great. So I don't know if Micheal or Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was important to our team also to make sure everybody felt safe and secure in the restrooms. We didn't want to just create a pavilion that was so open that that people didn't feel safe at certain times. So we really wanted natural daylight, to have plenty of lighting and plenty of privacy provided to people going in there, and then providing a security gate that is kind of hidden away but can be pulled out to kind of secure the space if during certain times we don't want people going in there. So security and safety were a big part of our thought process during the design phase of this project.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. We also have another design question about the roof and if it will be vegetated.
It actually will not be vegetated. This is one of the few roofs, I think, in the park that is not going to have a green roof. The team did talk about that quite a bit, and in the end, what we decided to do was to just make it like the rest of the building, just super pure concrete geometry, and just go for exquisite kind of execution on that end and have it just be kind of the complement to the landscape around it.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning that there's a lot of new planting just behind the pavilion as well. So that the pavilion is really going to be meant as a foreground element with the sort of lovely plantings, the new plantings that'll happen right behind it. So it will feel very integrated without having to go to a green roof, which added thickness, complexity, and maybe an element that wasn't necessary.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's something that's unique to our park is the topography, like has been mentioned previously. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? I know we have a really good view here with the rendering where you see that vegetation coming over one of the sides.
Sure.
Yeah, again, you know, I think we had a lot of fun sort of, you know, again, like there was a big chunk of this building that was actually just, its pure function was to kind of retain land, right? Which is just to create space. And so, you know, we're kind of using the concrete as that, but then again, really celebrating it into something that's occupiable. And so, you know, we like the idea that the building can kind of really seamlessly integrate and that there's something about the pureness of the kind of material that's been very kind of architecturally formed versus the kind of wildness of the landscape next to it. And that's a lot about what Micheal talked about in some of our initial inspiration, that tension to us was really interesting, that you could make something quite beautiful and pure next to something that has a little bit of a mind of its own, and that's the beauty.
Absolutely. And we have a question.
Melissa, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
One other thing I was just going to add to that I think is an interesting element you can see here is, you know, the plants coming up, you know, in the skylight area within the restroom. You know, one of the things we talked a lot about was how do we make a bathroom essentially feel more inviting and more like a public space, and bringing in the greenery and opening it up so you have fresh air and light coming in makes that feel less like you're being pulled into a dark restroom and more like an extension of the park space. And I think, you know, the building itself is really successful in connecting those things, but that moment is really an indicator that this is another part of the park and you can go in here and you're welcome to. It's not like you're quickly rushing into a bathroom and rushing out, which is often the experience of smaller restroom buildings. So I think that's a really exciting element where the landscape comes in as well.
Yeah, and that's a good segue to our next question. John and Andrew, you both spoke to the context of the location of the family pavilion. So can you tell us a little bit more again about where the placement of the building is in relation to some of the other elements nearby on the deck?
Sure. And so, you know, one of the things this is a good time to talk a little bit about some of the public engagement, which got us here too, which I, you know, neglected to touch on earlier, but is very important to talk about. You know, since before this park was even reconceptualized by Waterloo Greenway, there has been a public space around these trees. It's been a gathering space with events and some facilities, water fountains. There were some bathrooms there. And it's because these trees are so wonderful and provide this shade in, you know, a really hot climate. And so, you know, the design team looks to continue that, but in a way that was more sensitive to the tree's health and in a way that better connected with the amenities throughout the park. And so, you know, through that process, we lowered the deck significantly. The deck used to be elevated and up in the tree canopy, and built this deck right on the entry sequence from Trinity Street, as Maija pointed out. And so that deck will really serve as a seating area. So we'll have movable seats and chairs where people can eat lunch or just hang out and enjoy themselves. We may also be able to do certain programs, like you could imagine a yoga class taking part on that big, beautiful deck under these trees. And so the seats are mostly mobile because of that. But that'll be a great eating area for when we have the food trucks. So we have food trucks here, and this was a great community engagement opportunity for us, and really a lesson learned about what our community's needs are regarding food. You know, Michael Shu's office was part of long discussions with us about what goes here in terms of food service. And originally we started with some really exciting concepts for a cafe. You know, a physical building in the park. You see these park cafes all around the country and the world, and they're really beautiful opportunities. But when we went to the community and really engaged about this, what we heard was those cafes are too expensive for me, and they don't feel as inviting and accessible as Austin does. And so we took that feedback and looked at ways that we can make this feel more inviting, flexible, and accessible. And when we talked more about that, it wasn't just about the price point of the food to the park visitor. It's also about the types of operators that can have access to partnering with us in these spaces. And so that really steered us towards this food truck concept. I mean, not only can we lower the cost of food for the park visitors, which means more people will eat here and more people will spend full days in the park, which is what we want, but also it means that the number of operators in Austin who could potentially operate a food service here multiplies times dozens or hundreds. And that's really exciting to us, as an organization who can provide those opportunities to great vendors who might not have the capital to fit out this, large cafe building in a park. And that was kind of an epiphany, sort of an aha moment for us, and led to this great design that you see here. And I also personally just feel like the experience of this cafe or this food truck and pavilion and seating area adjacent to this playscape feels much more integrated than sort of a glassed off building and then people playing nearby. You can yell at your kids within earshot from sitting outside. And I think the collaboration of those two spaces was also really key in us thinking about this as a food truck area rather than a cafe.
Yeah, John, I think it's worth pointing out what I feel like is a great job the team has done. It's a sizable park. It's not a small park, but I think the level of intimacy that's available in this park is going to be quite extraordinary and very unique, even inside Austin. That there are these beautiful expansive spaces, but there are also a lot of these quite small, cozy, smaller, individualized size spaces that I think people will really enjoy.
Yeah, that's a great point. And those are all things that we have heard from our community, and we want to create the best experience for folks to be able to join us at Waterloo Park for a while and spend a good amount of their day there. And things like our family pavilion and restroom facility, food trucks, shade, all of those things help with our park guest experience. So thank you for adding that. That's really helpful. We also have another question about the design of the building itself, and someone asking what's the purpose of the larger block of the building across from the restrooms. So we have the restrooms on one side, and can you tell us again about the function of the other side of the building?
Sure. This chunk of the building here on the right-hand side, the bigger box is actually storage. So, this is a quite sizable park, and we talked a lot about storage needs. And there's a lot for the pavilion areas, but, even just simple things about, doing small events or, having things that, you want to bring out in and out on a regular basis to host those events. You need places to put those and to weatherproof them and to secure them. So that area is just pure storage. And then the smaller rectangle is the other thing that we don't want to think about, but that all restaurants and food trucks produce trash. So we wanted to make sure that felt like an integrated experience. And so it's an area where they can store trash until it can be taken away at later points in the evening.
Yeah, and to add to Maija's point on the storage areas, again, we've talked to a lot of our peer parks throughout the country, and we were in the design phase, so we're talking about all these beautiful design elements. And whenever we talk to the operations person, they're like, whatever storage you need, multiply it times 10, add more storage, add more storage. And so storage is such a premium for operating these parks long term. And really, having storage right on site adjacent to these spaces like the deck or the play area allows us the opportunity to put on more programs for the community at a lower cost and more efficiently. So, it's great to have this right here so we can be much more flexible and, lower staffing about those programs. So that space is going to be, full to the brim and with all the great program items that we have to offer for the park.
Yeah, thank you. We have one final question specifically about the drinking fountains and fixtures in this area and what changes we're planning for cleaning and operational purposes after COVID-19, and if we're taking some of those lessons learned. I don't know, John, if you have any initial thoughts on this, but I think generally we are learning from the city. We're taking their guidelines and recommendations. And since the park isn't open yet, we have time to keep taking those in and seeing what best practices are. John, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, like everyone, we're learning daily, it seems like, guidance on, what the future holds and how we can interact with each other safely. I think, one of the positives we look at is we have this great open outdoor space, and increasingly it seems like these open spaces outside are some of the safest ways for us to engage with each other. So, when that time comes, we see this as being a great sort of space for the community to reconnect, and the park will be open at that time, hopefully, when we're all able to get back together and provide safe ways for people to get back together. So I think, inadvertently, some of the things we've done here with, opening up the restroom to more fresh air and light, providing less, entirely enclosed space for hand washing and things like that, are looking like those will be beneficial for overall public health. So we're going to keep looking to that guidance and obviously follow the experts on that. But I think there's, there'll be a real high demand for these outdoor spaces to get together once that is safe for our community to do.
Yeah, thank you, John. And of course, we have several comments about the beautiful design and a lot of great feedback on the work that the Micheal Schuh team has done. So we're getting close to the end of the time of our tour. Did you all have any final thoughts before we close it out?
Just want to thank everyone and thank Waterloo Greenway for having us on today. I feel like this park is going to be such a gift, and there's sort of no more relevant project for our office as designers, but also as Austinites. Knowing what sort of COVID has brought to us and what the future might hold, we're excited to sort of see this as a very positive thing for the city in the very near future.
Yeah, same.
Thank
I think
you,
we
Micheal.
have a huge amount of respect for the Greenway team and the amazing amenity that this is going to bring to our city, along with just the high caliber of kind of design and community thoughtfulness. It's just been an absolute pleasure to work on this in a part of our city. So we're excited. We're ready for it to open.
Yeah, and I'll just add thanks to everybody. It's been great working with the Waterloo Greenway team, and looking forward to finishing this job up with you guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you all.
I'll just add. Sorry, Melissa. I'll just add. I echo, what y'all said. Micheal Schuh's office has been fantastic to work with on a very collaborative project, and a lot of the work we do as an organization is about partnership. The entire park and our existence is a partnership with the city of Austin and the community, and it takes great partners on the design team to work within that framework of partnership. And I think this building and the responsive design to those conditions and feedback speak to the quality of this partnership and the design team we're working with. So I'm excited about the results, not just from an architectural standpoint, but also as a product of our partnership, working with the community and the city to achieve this. So echoing everything y'all said, and really appreciate your partnership and wonderful work on this design.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult time for all of our community right now. But because of everything going virtual, we've been able to do some really great tours with a lot of our partners. And so it's been really great to have these more detailed conversations that we don't normally get to have. But when we are able, we'll be resuming our monthly on-site tours. And Maija, if you could take us to our last slide. We have a few other partners that have really helped us make these virtual opportunities possible. So we wanted to give a special thank you to our 2020 program sponsors, which include BBVA, the PAL Foundation, Susan Bond Foundation, Waterloo Sparkling Water, and the Word Company. This is, again, a part of our Waterloo-In-Place series. If you'd like to watch this recording after we finish, We'll have it on social media, and you can also share it with those in your network. Please join us at waterloogreenway.org if you'd like to sign up for future updates and find out about our upcoming events. And with that, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you all to our presenters today for a great tour. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.